All right, hi, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the first episode of Wrap It, our wrap-based series where we're going to be taking you through the journey of wrapping a car from start to finish. My name's Joe, I'm from Roland DG, and this is James Deacon.
From Bigger Stickers, so I do the wrap training courses at the college, and this is the facility that we use.
And as I said, we're going to be taking you through a step-by-step process of transforming a car from start to finish. With each episode sort of taking a look at a slightly different element or different part of the process. We're going to be transforming this car using loads of different techniques and applications. This is the aim in different areas. So each episode of these, we're going to tackle a different one of those to show you. And today we're starting off by looking at prep and cleaning. So do you want to talk us through?
Yeah, because we're going to try and take them through chronologically. So we're going to try and literally take you through the process of talking to a customer, taking them around the vehicle, discussing aspects of their ideas, discussing your ideas actually on their vehicle, and then we'll take hopefully through the design aspects. Both Joe and myself will be doing that, and we've got something to talk about that a bit later on as well. It might be quite exciting. And then we're going to actually try physically printing those materials and applying them to the car. But like we said, we don't want to every episode as we go around the vehicle talk about how to clean the car, how to strip the car down. So we're going to start these series of webinars by getting a lot of the nitty-gritty stuff, what would someone say is the less glamorous aspect of vehicle wrapping, and do all those aspects of cleaning that some of you may be confused by. Now again, we're not going to go into the level of detail we would on a training course, but we're just going to give you some of those tips and tricks, some pointers, do's and don'ts about cleaning a vehicle down.
So we're going to start off today by doing that part. And at the end of each of these episodes, what we'll do is we'll give you a little teaser into the next episode to show you what we're going to be doing. So at the end of this episode, we'll show you roughly what we're sort of thinking for next episode, where we're going to start, as we said, design, print, prep of the materials and the applications. And the applications, we're going to try and give you guys something a little bit different. So rather than just doing a color change or a single print job onto the vehicle, we're going to try some different applications, some things that maybe haven't been done before. We're going to try some weird and wonderful materials, and we're going to show you some of the tools and things involved in that process as well. All right, so next up, what we're actually going to do is start by taking a look at walk around the car.
It's something I would do with a client when we first met a client. Now typically the first maybe point of contact would be on the telephone. Client will phone you. What I'd like you to think about doing is creating a checklist for your business, similar to a job sheet. So we're not doing it for memory. We're not inclined to just say this is how much a wrap costs. First off, what we're going to do is actually speak to the client, maybe talk about budget. We're going to talk about who's creating the artwork. Does the client create the artwork? Do I create the artwork? Do I modify my client's artwork? So I think it's a really important factor to discuss. If you just say to your client, create the artwork, what if that turns up? It's not the correct resolution, it's not been artworked properly, it's not got the correct amount of bleed. So I would really start to drill down on the exact type of vehicle we're dealing with. Ideally, I want to see it face to face, so hence why I'd call it a walk around. Yes, I can get the customer to send me a photo, but we're going to maybe point out on the car that we're working on what would be the problems with just looking at a photograph of the vehicle. Be much better. So we're not going to use a brand new Ferrari. We're going to use a typical car that the typical average person may bring in, and the problems when that car's 10 years old. It's a bit trickier to deal with, I think, an older vehicle than one that's just come out of a showroom. So we're going to talk about different materials, different areas of the vehicle we can and can't wrap. We're going to talk about when the vehicle should be brought to us, how the vehicle should come to us, who's going to take parts off the vehicle, what would that mean, what tools do we need, should you learn how to take vehicles apart, are you a mechanic? So again, we're not going to go into the level of detail we would on the wrap course, but we're going to try and give you a general overview of just that liaison between what the customer's expectation is and what we can physically deliver in the form of a vehicle wrap. Plus as well, we're a bit limited on a webinar. We're not going to do this as a vehicle wrap, coming in, staying in for 5 days, being wrapped, leaving. We're going to do this once a month. We're bringing a vehicle, we're working on it. So we are going to bend the rules, we're going to break the rules. So there's a way, basically do as we say, not as we do.
Joe, you getting me?
There'll be certain aspects I would always want a vehicle to come in prior to application, so I want it brought to me the day before. Now, we can't in a webinar have a vehicle sat there for a day. So we're going to break some of the rules. I'll explain why we shouldn't do that, and you can maybe see throughout the webinar if we do start to bend rules, if that causes us any problems.
All right, so next up, we're going to go take a walk around the car.
Right, in this next section, we're going to do a walk around with the client. That is the name I'd give to just the first stages of liaising with the client about the work you're carrying out and the condition you'd like the vehicle to arrive in. So, as you can see, we're just using the average Ford Mondeo. Graphics to be extraordinary, so we're using a normal everyday vehicle, and this is maybe the condition you'd first see the vehicle. Now this does a lot of mileage, this vehicle, as you can see, and it'll have a lot of contamination on the paintwork. So we'd like to discuss any issues with the vehicle itself, and then we'll like to consider how we're going to sort of tackle that and exactly what we're going to do to counteract any issues with that. Cards, just the condition of the vehicle, the condition of the paintwork, and making sure the job goes as smoothly as possible. So in this next section, we're going to look at taking the customer through the particular job we're carrying out. Now, as we're going to be doing digital sort of type elements, the points I'd like to raise with the customer is how the artwork is going to transition from one section of the vehicle to the other. So from the front wing to the bonnet, how that artwork's going to break up, how we can sort of help that when we're actually designing and maybe showing a preview for the customer of artwork. Now, one of the main tips I'm going to give you when we're doing a walk around is just to think that no two vehicles are the same. So don't think, oh, I've done a Ford Mondeo before, it will be the same. Well, the client's going to be different, the vehicle itself is going to be different. Brand new vehicles have their own set of issues. An older vehicle is going to have different issues we're going to have to discuss. So a brand new vehicle is going to possibly have contamination from where it leaves the factory. So it's going to have more silicons, waxes present. We've got to be really cautious of those. An older vehicle is going to have more issues with the paintwork, rust, dents in the paintwork, scratches, things I'd like to discuss at the point of sale rather than completing the work, customer coming to collect it and maybe not being happy with what's being provided. So that's some of the points we're going to raise now and hopefully make you realise that that can be sometimes where the problems can start at that first point of contact with the customer, yourself not understanding what the customer wants, the customer not understanding what you're providing. So hopefully this will make life a little bit easier for you. So when it comes to things like taking the vehicle apart, I'd like to discuss that with the client. Are we going to take the brake lights out? Are we going to remove the handles off the car? Again, I just want to reiterate, no two jobs are the same. So one client may want a very temporary wrap. It may not be necessary to remove the handles with that particular client. They don't want the expense of removing handles. Again, do bear in mind, removing handles may speed up the job massively, so it could actually decrease the price of wrapping the vehicle. So I would just like you to talk things through. Now, we've already highlighted some dents on this vehicle. There's a scrape at the rear here where the paint's been damaged, and actually I can feel the bodywork is pitted there. So I'd like to point that out to the customer, because sometimes they believe that the wrap will hide all those elements, but it won't. It could actually highlight some of that damage. So it may be an opportunity for you actually to undertake that work, or send them to a professional nearby who could undertake that work, or let the customer rectify the bodywork themselves, which is an option, but cover yourselves. Again, reducing paperwork that you can sign off when a vehicle comes in, just make sure the customer's totally happy. We are actually going to take certain elements off this vehicle. We'll show you that in a bit. And also, it's a really good idea to also email the client before they arrive, to make sure that they are given the opportunity to clean their own vehicle and they're giving clear instructions on how to do so. I'd just like to make sure that we also discuss, and the reason for them to bring the vehicle to you is, yes, you can work off a vehicle template. We can get the client to send us pictures, but there's nothing like seeing the actual vehicle in context. We can discuss delivery dates. You've got a better idea of how long the job will take. They can see your premises. You can actually physically meet the client. It might also lead to cross-selling or upselling, so just making sure that you can offer other services the client may require. So if you see condition of wheels, could we offer a wheel refurb? There are other elements I'd like to discuss before we sign off and actually decide how long we're going to book the vehicle in for.
I hope we've covered most of the points for you there. Again, we're going to be doing questions answers at the end of all these seminars, so if you have any particular issues you've had with checking a vehicle in, or something that went wrong when you didn't do a walk around, we'd love to hear that, just to help anyone in future with those same issues. Okay, another little tip, just things to remember when you're doing a walk around. Differences also between a colour change and a digital wrap possibly. So with a colour change, we're going to want to discuss things like door shuts. Does the customer expect just the exterior of the vehicle to be wrapped? Do they think they're going to receive the actual internal areas of the door shuts? Also, just don't forget that some customers will expect you to wrap this part of the door if you say you're going to wrap interior reveals and shuts. Now, this car hasn't got a roof rack. Some commercial vehicles would. So are you prepared to remove a very heavy remove rack from a vehicle? So possibly give the customer the option of removing that or getting it removed professionally, just to make sure that there's no accidents caused and you don't get a series of commercial vehicles arrive and you lose days of work because of something you weren't prepared for or the customer expected you to undertake. Just to recap, and don't forget, please seek professional advice regards taking parts off vehicles. You may be affecting warranties. If you take apart electronics or complex parts of the vehicle, you can affect airbags. There can be lights on the dashboard you'll have to turn out, so please be careful. There are lots of videos online, but just make sure that it's always good to speak to a mechanic or hire a professional mechanic to strip vehicles. If you're doing lots of colour changing, I'd suggest you go down that route unless you've got a very good mechanical background. Again, with commercial vehicles, we tend to find we're taking less off the vehicle, but again, with large contracts of fleet wrapping of digitally applied vehicle graphics, it's always good just to iron out whether you're wrapping the roof, which areas are going to be covered, which areas of the vehicle aren't going to be covered. So that's what the aim of a walk around, just liaise with the client and make sure we all understand where we stand.
Okay, so now we're going to take you through some of the different tools that you're probably going to be using when it comes to cleaning and preparing your car. So we've got a whole bunch of different stuff laid out in front of us, and James is going to talk us through how you might use these on the car or in preparation of getting onto the car as well, I guess. We've been kind enough to being supplied by a sign gear for a bunch of these tools, or most of the tools that you can see in front of you. It's a great site for getting any of the bits and bobs that you're probably going to need. So we'll talk through some of these different tools and how they might be used. So where are we going to start, James?
I think we'll start with cleaning, because that's where we'll generally start. It is a tool of the trade. I'd just like to start by saying, over the last 20 years, all these tools have been created pretty much. It's amazing now just the level of detail they go into and specific tools for really specific jobs. So if we start with cleaning, now again, I'm going to start the whole subject of cleaning by mentioning that it will be dependent on the film you're using. So if you're using a particular manufacturer's material, you should probably speak to them and speak to see if they have a proprietary or an in-house cleaning system that should be used to get the warranty on the film. So if you're dealing with certain manufacturers, they have their own cleaning systems. We're going to talk about more of a generic cleaning system and the type of stuff you'd want in a metal cabinet back in the workshop. So we'll start with the first parts of cleaning. Now we're going to mention a little bit about pre-warning the customer, the condition you'd like the vehicle to arrive in, doing a sign-off sheet for the vehicle, making sure it's generally clean, and ideally you've done a walk around, which we'll show you in another part of the webinar, just to identify any issues with the vehicle and the condition the vehicle should arrive in. For instance, I mentioned I'm going to get the vehicle steam cleaned ideally before they come in, or at least a jet wash. So when the vehicle comes in, as I said, everyone should have some water, just water with probably a baby shampoo in it, just a mild detergent, and we can use that just to remove pollution from the vehicle. Take off what we call visible dirt, so anything we can see on the vehicle. I'm going to probably do that and then sign the vehicle in and just check for damage and start to remove parts of the vehicle. Now, the big key thing that I tend to find most people miss when they're talking about the subject of cleaning is, one, not doing enough cleaning, and also not realising the amount of contamination that could be on a vehicle, and appreciating that a brand new vehicle will have as many issues as an older vehicle, just that they will have different chemicals, different types of contamination on them.
Oh, what, so from coming out of the factory they'll have different coatings, or?
Yeah, so they'll go through a process they call PDI, pre-delivery inspection. So they will wipe the vehicle down, they may machine polish the vehicle. They use back to black, they use silicone type products, they use waxes along the seals in the factory and then pre-delivery. So simply wiping a vehicle with alcohol is not going to remove all that contamination. So the next stage for me, and it's generally, we're going to call it a solvent-based clean. So we would use something like a glue remover, for example. That's going to be a solvent-based material. It's going to start to break down any tar, so vehicles that are slightly older. If it's been sign written and we've removed lettering, it's going to have maybe glue residue, so we do something like that. And a lot of these solvent-based cleaners will also remove wax and silicons. It's quite important though to remember that if you use a solvent cleaner, we're using a solvent adhesive, so it's make sure that none of the solvent chemicals are left present on the paint then.
So clean off your cleaner.
Yeah, and we call it, I tend to call it flush at Bigger Stickers, so I'm going to use maybe a homemade product. I particularly use one that's a mixture of water and alcohol. So we use that to literally flush off the solvent cleaner as a process. And then I would start to look at using either a manufacturer's approved surface cleaner or a surface cleaner, which is in this little pack you can see. So that's just a little small amount of each product. There's application fluids, isopropanol, surface cleaners and a glue remover. So it's good to have something and a good well-rounded cleaning kit. And then, so basically pure isopropanol for the final stages. And not just the chemicals you're using, but you'd also have a good think about the cloths you're using. Something like microfibers are great. They're a good all-purpose cloth. They really sort of dry out an area, good to use with waters, things that take longer to evaporate. Be very careful to buy good quality, because the dye, when we're using some of these chemicals, the dye can leach out into paint, so we wouldn't want to damage a vehicle, stain a vehicle.
Would you just stick them in the wash in between then?
You could, but then I would never use anything other than a white lint-free cloth for the final process of cleaning. So if I'm cleaning with water and just getting pollution off, getting mud off a vehicle, I'm going to use a cloth that I can wash and use again just for environmental purposes as well. But when I get down to those final stages of cleaning, I don't want to use a tissue that's going to give off lots of dust. I'm going to use something that's white as well, because I'm looking for what we call molecular contamination. Again, I'll never see molecules, but I know that if I'm cleaning an edge and my white cloth isn't white anymore, I would clean the vehicle again until it is. Obviously around rubbers, when you're using alcohols, it'll always leave a mark. So don't keep cleaning your car rubbers until there aren't any rubbers there anymore. And it's just mentioning with cleaning to be exceptionally careful with the vehicle. And obviously there's no point cleaning a vehicle down then taking parts off. So we must make sure that we
take off all your trim first,
take the trims off, decide what we're doing, decide what we're stripping down, and then start cleaning. Again, there's some amazing products. There's one I didn't know existed, so we got Wrap Wash. So it's just a specially formulated pH neutral shampoo to break down the dirt on a vehicle as a pre-clean. So if you are going to clean the vehicle down.
Less cleaning afterwards to get the cleaner off.
Yeah, so it's just a general wash which is going to clean the vehicle up before it possibly even comes into your workshop. So outside you might want to give it a clean down, get the worst of the contamination off it.
Oh, yeah, I mean we've even got this handy little pressure dispenser again. Super easy, but just means that it saves you using one of the little bottles to spray the whole car. Again, yeah. Quite good for.
And then we're washing it down. And also some of these work upside down. We're doing underneath, and there are bottles that work upside down now. So again, we can even get specialist cleaning bottles that we can use on the car. And again, different types of tissue, some tougher than others. This is a high quality one again. I would urge you not to use really cheap tissue, something that's going to scratch the vehicle. The other things I want to give a quick mention to are more car detailing products. So snow foam to get deep contamination out of paint, because if someone's polished their car a lot, used a lot of silicons, it's deep within the paint. So something to maybe cleanse the paint. We could also look at products like clay mitts, clay bar, to get any nibs off the paint, any other sort of contamination like that. And also don't forget your hands. When you've cleaned a vehicle, there's two sort of things I want to mention just about your hands. One is they're very good sensors. You can feel if paint is still slippery, if there is contamination from silicone there.
Makes
just
sense.
Be more aware near trims. Now, also remember, if someone touches your paint to check if there's contamination there, they've then contaminated it, because there's also oils on our hands. So ideally wear gloves when you're doing the cleaning process. When you start to use some of these heavier chemicals, surface cleaners, you'll realise it actually melts latex gloves. So think that what that's doing to your skin, things can, and to your bloodstream. So I'd always recommend using good quality protective gloves for the cleaning process.
Okay, so what's next?
So if we move down, we've got the basic tools of fitting. So I'm never going to fit a wrap without a squeegee, a glove, a heat gun. Thinking about temperature.
We've got a few different squeegees here, haven't we?
Yeah,
like
so
got some pretty basic ones, but with a nice, decent felt edge.
Yeah, so that's a particular monkey strip, which is a type of edge. We can buy them in large packets at a lower value than buying a whole squeegee. And then when that wears out, put a new one on. typically at least every day, possibly if I'm doing a lot of vinyl work. Sometimes you'll replace that a couple of times a day. We try not to put the tools down. We try not to let them get contaminated. So at the end of all this, we'd probably like to keep it all in a kit, some sort of tool belt to keep all the tools in.
Yes, that's what we've got here. It's a handy little belt that goes around your waist.
It's model that for us now.
It's got a little magnet on it. It's got little clips in it for chucking all your different bits on for easy access as well. So that's quite handy. And with the squeegees, we've got different hardnesses as well. We've got some that are a bit more flexible than others.
Yeah.
We've got ones that are different shapes as well for getting into different recesses and
Got
things.
ones like this. It comes in a neat little holder. Better hand position, better grip. We've got to think about, you know, tendons and carpal tunnel and how we're holding something and angles we're using. And then even some will be custom made. Now, years ago we used to custom make them. Nowadays you've got all weird and wonderful. Again, these have got different amounts of flex. They've got different shapes at the end. We can hopefully show you later. And again, we're going to go into more detail on some of these tools when we're actually using them, because there's no better way to show a tool than actually physically show you what to do with it and how to use it. So these ones will actually clip to your vehicle. They've got magnetic strips in them, so they're always easy to hand when you need them.
Yes, you guys probably can't see close up there, as we said, we'll show you in a bit, but these have got little hooks on them. This one's got a little kind of foot that's really thin for getting in and behind.
Yeah, all those nooks and crannies around the backs of edges, things like that.
And then different hardnesses of the other ones as well.
And then fitting tools, we've got gloves. So that's a brand new one on the market. That's a super glove. So there's many others. There's wrap glove. You can just use a basic cotton glove. The idea of these is they've got better slip ability, so it's going to move. We can press harder on the film without generating friction, so they glide. Very hard wearing and durable as well, these ones.
Okay, what's this one?
Yeah, just found that in there. That's the put on the edge of your squeegee, so you can put that on the edge of a squeegee and then put it in a holder, that as well. So then you can actually, you get more glide with your squeegee, less friction, less scratching, less marking. Again, there are lots of specialist squeegees. There's one I'll use just called a wet edge squeegee, so we can wet the edge of it when we're applying gloss blacks, things that are going to scratch easily or mark, customers coming to see it. You can polish vinyls, you can increase the luster, but it's better not to get a mark in the first place. We can use something like that.
That was that. SG pocket, super glove pocket, yeah, for a little glove for your squeegee.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, the basics, the heat guns. Now, again, years ago we would use a paint stripping heat gun. These are still very popular. You'll see one in every sort of sign shops will have one of these, maybe even possibly a hairdryer looking under the bench there. But this is the latest cutting edge version. So again, it's temperature controlled. You can also get ones, if you have one of these, by the way, you'd probably want to purchase a separate laser thermometer. So this isn't measuring, we could maybe have a gun that tells us the temperature coming out of the gun, but it's very important to measure the temperature on the surface of the vinyl as well, to make sure we're post-heating correctly. Again, we'll take you through that later. This gun, however, this will actually measure the surface temperature and will adjust its own thermometer accordingly. So it will increase and decrease temperature to form an accurate heat on the surface, so we can use it for post-heating. So again, when we're doing that, we'll go into a bit more detail about that gun. You've got the Steinel gun, so it will have one of these that effectively clips onto the top of the gun. So similar to this sort of idea. Again, the more expensive the gun, typically the longer the cable, because again, sign guys want to be able to walk all around a vehicle working on it all day. The build quality will be better on a better gun, and but we're literally talking entry-level gun. Least I'd recommend spending is £30 to £50. These guns are looking at more £300, and again, there's everywhere in between. There's the £150 gun, the £80 gun. So I would urge you to, the more wrapping you're doing, obviously the more you'll probably spend on tools, and the more tools you'll have. So and then we've got magnets. So I'm just going to disappear for a minute actually, because I've just realised I've got another one round here. But if you open that up, Joe.
Let's have a look at this one. So these magnets are for holding things, maybe your prints, onto the vehicle. So if you want to hang your print in place onto the vehicle and pop it on so you can line it, then these magnets are great for doing that. There's some different shapes here.
And then you've got these ones you may have seen before. So this one would clamp onto the vehicle. You've then got to remove the handle if you want to have vinyl flush or do a reveal. So these handles screw on and off like so. You've got the ring pull type magnets. They tend to be very powerful neodymium magnets. These are encased in plastic and they have a protective sheath so it doesn't attract all your blades in your toolkit and things like that. So yeah, lots of different shapes. This one's very interesting cutter as well while we're talking about cutters. So this is a double edge cutter. What this is designed for, I haven't set it up yet. Again, we'll do a more explanation demo when we actually use it. But this can cut a channel in your backing paper to do what we call a center reveal. So we can cut through the backing, just a 1-inch slither off the backing paper, and then it allows us to reveal the material from the centre out. So we'll show you that in a bit more detail. Again, we're going towards the more expensive end of the spectrum for knives, but I think this is worth its weight in gold. It's something you'll use all the time. We have an NT blade there, which is a different type of cutter. Again, lots of people use an Alpha blade as well as a different type. And then you've got your Swan Morton knife as well, the retractable. You're probably using a 10A or an 11 blade in that. And then just for safety, we have a cage. So this is what you'll put blades into when they're used. So you can have that on your toolkit and your tool belt, so you're not tempted to roll knives in vinyl and put them in the bin and naughty things like that. So that's what the cage is for. So I think we've covered everything for now. If we've missed anything, we'll come back to it in more detail while we're actually using the tools, but that's just the general overview. Again, I would expect to spend, you know, £100 to £300 on tools for a basic sign shot, a wrap shot. So you're not talking thousands of pounds. So I would err on the side of quality when you're going to buy tools. They do speed the job up. I may use some of these tools once a month, but when I use it, it's needed, it's paid for itself that one time I've used it. So I would recommend that. And just make sure you store chemicals correctly. You follow health and safety guidelines with knives, with chemicals, with electricity. Again, it's quite dangerous. We'd want a tool belt. I would also think in my workshop of having a nice table like this. Again, rulers are tools. We're going to have safety rulers. I would also think about having a trolley or something to put the bulk of the tools on that can follow you around the vehicle, can be moved out of the way when you don't need it, and just something to store tissues, gloves, heat guns on. And then we're going to use something like that for tools we're using all throughout the day. Perfect. So there we go, quick overlook at tools. Next we're going to move on to doing some actual cleaning on the vehicles. Okay, so now we're outside with the car. Probably want to be inside for this bit, but we're just going to give you a little bit of a demonstration. So James is going to talk us through by giving us an idea of what kind of cleaning you're going to do on the door here, and maybe have a look at removing this door handle too. Yeah, so we've spoken a little bit about walk around, so going beyond that. So as you can see, if a car turns up there, it's way too dirty. So we're on a preliminary clean ideally. I would normally just start jet washing, but we're going to say worst case scenario. The reason I don't want it turning up like this, if I start wiping tissue into this dirt and grime, it's going to grind it into the paint. If this is a high-end car, I'm going to affect the paint. So we really just want water to take off that initial dirt and grime. Again, most trade vehicles, people won't notice and people just start wiping it with a cloth. But you've got to be careful that we don't create swirls in the paint when we're wiping dust and grit over the surface. Also, we'd want to strip the vehicle prior to cleaning. So I'm just going to start with the handle. Now, there's probably a Ford mechanic somewhere which is turning in his grave watching me do this. But the principle of most handles is holding the handle in that position, undoing the grub screw, and you'll slowly find that this barrel, the barrel section, will become loose. Now, you've got to be careful what you're doing with cars. Don't do this. Again, ideally speak to a Ford mechanic. I will now just show you some of the issues with taking handles apart. Obviously, if you're halfway through unscrewing that and you hear this clunk and a crash, the whole door mechanism is falling down inside the car and you've probably taken it out too far. So be careful. But now you can see I can take that out. Now what happens is a lot of these pre-tension themselves, but some don't. So if you feel there's still resistance on the handle, you'll find that the clips will come out. And you'll find that the bar isn't preloaded. So what you'll find is normally it would just be a reverse process. We can take these rubbers out, we can take these out, the handle will slot back in, do the grub screw back up, and the handle will pull in tight. If it's not preloaded, it then involves trying to get that bar back out, hooking the handle back over it. So we'll show you that process later as well, but just be very careful, because if you can't access that, you could find it's very difficult to get the handle back on. If you've taken all the handles off the car and shut the doors and can't open the car, it all gets a bit embarrassing. So as you can see, be careful of these little fine bits of plastic. I've had these handles off loads of times, that always pops out. But just be careful that you retain any materials, you put stuff down in the right place, you label things. And I would suggest when you're practicing, take one handle off at a time. But my general advice is speak to a technician.
And we're going to be taking off all of the trim before cleaning, so all rubbers, all bits.
A lot of these rubbers on these vehicles are fixed, so it's actually to the top end of the door. So I haven't actually got a door rubber on the A-pillar. So
but if
all vehicles are built differently. Yeah, generally rubbers off, trims off, clean behind it. don't take them off after you've cleaned, mind your fingers.
All right, so what do you need me to pass to you for starters?
So the first thing I'm doing as well is obviously I'm sat down. I'm going to be much more comfortable when it gets to the later stages of cleaning. If I'm not spending over, if my back's not hurting, I'm going to take more time and care over cleaning the vehicle. So what we'll actually start with is probably water, as I said, just to act like a jet wash. We'll try and blast something. You might want to step back for this moment. Yeah. So I'm just literally going to wet the car down and just flush off a lot of that dirt with water. So I'll just tackle a small section of the vehicle for now. But ideally you'd want to use a high pressure washer, get a lot of this grit and grime off, or ideally steam cleaning will start to loosen a lot of that debris. I'd also recommend not cleaning on the day of application. I get all my vehicles delivered the day prior to delivery, so if using any sort of water, that's got a full 24 hours to evaporate before we start using chemical or we start actually applying vinyl. So once I've flushed all that off, I'm going to continue to use water and soap just to take off the worst of the grime. And I'm going to constantly turn my cloth. I'm not going to continue to move dirt around the panel and contamination around the panel. So when a piece is being completely used, fresh bit of cloth, make sure we use every part of the cloth. And we're just going to clean one section of this door down. So at last you can see the actual colour of the paint now, at least. But what that has revealed to me, now I can see that, and this is why I say it's a good idea to do a preliminary clean with the client still present, or have the client have the vehicle to be clean, then bring it to you. Because what I'm seeing now is possibly chips in the paint, some of that is dirt. I'm seeing little scrapes, scratches, marks. I can see it much clearer than when it was dirty and it's got lots of contamination on it. I'm also concerned if I use the back of my hand, I can generally feel texture there. That's telling me there's a lot of tar present. So then we would go to a tar and glue remover, if you won't mind grabbing that for me, Joe. It's just inside there. So what I'm going to start to do now is a solvent clean of this panel. I've identified it's not a brand new vehicle. It has got, obviously driven through road works, it's picked up tar. There could have been glue residue left from sign writing. So we're just going to allow some solvents to absorb into that. So I'm using another piece of tissue again now, one that I can continue just to use with this product. Again, if I use a wet cloth, it would dilute this solution. So we're just going to use another cloth now. And I'm still using this really sort of tough, durable cloth. It's not falling apart. It's going to stay together so I can continue to use it. And hopefully I'm not picking up too much dirt because I've cleaned it with water. And I'm being quite liberal with this product. You'll typically find solvent cleaners won't evaporate as quickly, so you've got a bit more time to let them soak in. So we're just going to take, as you can see, I'm still getting dirt off on my cloth as well, even though we cleaned it down with water. Again, I was going to be a bit more generous with that. Again, you'll have to excuse me if I keep shouting because I'm used to training and talking to people not being mic'd up. So I'm just putting some more solvent cleaner on there. Now again, the benefit of doing this outside, which I wouldn't recommend you doing, obviously, again, jet washing we're going to do outside. Most of the water cleaning we can do outside. But we would want to do this indoors now. We'd maybe want extraction. So if you've got negative pressure in the workshop, you're on a fan taking the air out of the workshop. So high levels of solvents don't build up. Obviously, I've got protective eyewear in case this splashes in my eyes. You'd maybe also want a wash kit present in case you did get any chemicals in your eyes. And I've also got protective gloves just so this chemical doesn't come in direct contact with my skin. So now I'm just going to leave that. I'm not going to wipe that immediately off. I'll go back over it in areas where I can still see a lot of contamination. Again, we've cleaned it. So when just to show you, if I turn my cloth, keep cleaning. Now a lot of that colour I'm seeing, that is tar. So that is tar being broken down by the chemical. So I'm going to probably keep doing a solvent clean until I'm not getting this discolouring on my cloth. That is also why towards the final stages you're going to be using white cloth. So we just make sure we haven't got any contamination on the surface. As I've said as well, you've got to be interested in paint if you're covering up paint. So I'm also looking just to see if it has had respray work. I'm also quite conscious, especially at the walk around stage, is this brand new paint? Is this vehicle 1 year old? This is 10 years old. So in my mind, I'm always thinking of paint on a microscopic level and thinking, how much surface area has my glue got to adhere to? So technically, a brand new vehicle is going to have a more highly polished surface. You're going to get less bond strength or adhesion to a highly polished surface than you would to paint that has been keyed. I'm not saying keyed, vandalism keyed, I'm talking micro keying. So just the abrasion from sponge washing off a car, or literally just dirt and debris making contact with the paint. On a microscopic level, that's going to slightly key the paint. So I can actually be more confident with a slightly older paint. Now, when the paint gets too old, that's something you want to look out for on older commercial vehicles, because this paint can start to fail. The lacquer can start to thin. Sometimes it can turn powdery, and lacquer failing around edges. So just watch out for that. So think of, is it brand new? Quite difficult to stick to. Paint gets older, bond strength increases. As the paint deteriorates, that can also affect our bond strength. So now that's soaked in for a bit, I'm just going to give it one more wipe down with that product. Again, normally I'd be doing everything once at a time. Water all over the car, solvent all over the car. Then we're going to go on to the next stage after this, which will be flushing, because I don't want any glue remover present when I put glue on the car. Obviously on the back of our vinyls, we don't want that to react. So I'm going to use more solvent, and then we're going to clean this down now. But a magic wonders of television, you'll come back and this would have, all the tars disappeared, and we'll talk about flushing off the solvents. Yeah, so this is a solution I've made up, which is a mixture of isopropanol and water. So I'm just going to use this to flush off any solvent cleaner. So it's just going to make sure that none of that is present. The water will help to carry it. The alcohol will help to make it evaporate faster. So again, let's just use another cloth. This is a high quality microfiber, it's colour fast. I'm just going to use that because of its absorbency qualities, just to flush off that water and clean that up. So now we can start to say it's clean, and we're getting rid of that greasiness from the solvent cleaner. So we're just flushing that off and cleaning it down. Then, as we get towards the end, we would use the white cloth, and we would use a full strength isopropanol, for example. So once we've flushed off those chemicals, I'm just using a full strength isopropanol. Now, when we start to use these chemicals, I'm less likely to spray on the vehicle. I'm more likely to spray on my cloth and then clean. And we tend to clean in a straight action. It's less likely to create swells in the paint if we're cleaning like that. You're going to use a soft cloth. It's going to be white. It's going to be lint free. And again, the reason for using a white cloth is as I get down to the final stages, I can just make sure my cloth is still white and there's no contamination on there. In the reality, I know I've just shown this area, but I'm probably going to spend twice as long cleaning the edges of panels. Here, we don't have to worry too much about bond strength. So as long as there's no contamination, nothing's going to react with the adhesive. I'm actually more concerned about swage lines, areas like this around handles, edges of panels where I need a really high bond strength. Again, if you're using an actual manufacturer's film, you may want to use a specialist cleaner. This is a popular one, Avery surface cleaner. You've also got the Sign Gear surface cleaner, and some are dedicated to particular tasks. Again, do I need to use this over the entire surface area of the vehicle? I may just use it on gaps, edges, just where I want really high bond strength. So that, as a general overview, should be ready to apply film. But there's nothing better than continuing to check for contamination, remembering that oils from skin will contaminate paint though, and just attention to detail. It's areas like the bottoms of wheel arches, inside wheel arches, that people tend to rush, don't do correctly, and they're the first parts of a wrap that could potentially fail. So cleaning is everything, basically.
Okay, so we've tackled the cleaning. We've looked at the preparation and a bunch of the tools as well. We started to take a look at the car to try and figure out what we're going to do for our first full episode of application. So we're probably going to be looking at the sort of rear left-hand side of the car, and we're going to try and mix some interesting materials, which is what we've got here. So we've started taking a look at some samples, and we've got some quite nice textured, sort of metallic, silvery looking films here. which we think would look nice for a sort of rustic panelled metallic look.
Yeah. Again, we're going to give it a name. Maybe we'll come up with a nice name by the end of it.
Yeah.
And it's also just making sure we're doing print tests, because what we're working with is essentially a wrap film. So it's not a system. It's not a print laminate. It's not a print media for starters. So we're just making sure, because we've actually found that a lot of these films will go through the VG2, the new VG2 printer. So we're just doing some print samples, some coated films, some wrap vinyls. It's not suitable to print onto. We are going off-piste a bit here. We're not doing something which necessarily a manufacturer would condone or guarantee or warranty. So this is just me and Joe being creative, seeing what works, just trying to push the envelope of vehicle wrapping a bit. And as you can see, the ink's taken nicely.
So we've printed the same image onto a few of these different materials just to check that the ink's working fine and the scratch resistance is pretty good. You know, that you could laminate these as well if you could find a matching film, which would obviously
so that'll be the next few
help.
tests. Again, when something's textured, more difficult to get a laminate to sit correctly on it. But I've never done it. We've found some really thin laminates, so we're going to experiment with those, putting thicker laminates on thinner laminates, and then obviously the ultimate test is to see whether it applies to my car, stays on my car, and can be removed from the vehicle as well. So once we've got the thumbs up towards the end of the seminar, then we'll know.
Yeah, so that's what we're doing with some of these materials. As we said, next episode, we're going to show you a little bit more about the design when we've got a bit further down the road with that. So we've got an actual finished design, which we're going to print onto probably a few different materials. We'll tell you the full solution next time. As you can see, we've got some swatches and bits and bobs from suppliers that we're going to be hopefully looking to use across this design, because it's not going to be one material. It's not going to be one big print like we've got here. We're going to be trying to mix and match, as we said, and try and do something a bit different on that rear left panel. And we're just going to give you a little bit of a teaser now as well, because we are going to run a competition throughout this webinar series. So our aim is to try and do different areas of the car with different applications, different materials, different styles. And we'd like to offer up one of the areas of the car to you guys to come up with some interesting applications, some cool design, some nice idea, whatever it might be. At the moment, we're thinking possibly the roof of the car, which is about, what did we say,
2.5 metres long, about 1.1, 1.2 metres wide. Again, we'll give you the full details. We'll probably upload a template for you to download.
Yeah, so we'll upload the rules or restrictions or template probably onto our social media channels, and probably have that finalised by the next webinar, so you guys can start thinking about your ideas, submit concepts. We'll choose our maybe 2 favourite concepts, take those to the next stage, and then we'll get a winner, and we'll produce that final graphic to go on the car as well.
Or try to, so don't make life too difficult. We do want you to play with texture, with different finishes, so looking at mattes, satins, mixing satins with mattes, texture with mattes, ink.
Other technologies as well, maybe.
Yeah, something we're not aware of.
Mix
Surprise
it with print, UV, I don't know, milling, engraving, textiles, whatever it might be. Go wild, but don't go too wild.
And if you want to see kit, we'll be explaining it. You're quite welcome to come down to the Creative Centre if you're interested in the technology we have here, just to see what can be used. Then, we can arrange that as well.
So there we go, quick roundup again of the webinar so far. So we've been talking through prep and application. We've shown you guys a bunch of the tools and things that you're hopefully going to be using and that you should be using to get the right application. Gone through the different the walk around of the car. Important part for checking what the work is you're going to be doing and talking through with your customer and your clients, so that you don't stumble across any of these things later on down in the project. You want to get those, the little niggly pieces that pop up down the line out the way early, so that you can talk through with your customer and figure out ways around these, or work into the cost or your design, all these little things.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I tend to find when you're talking to customers, it's really important to agree what you're doing, how you're doing it, how much you're charging to do it before you undertake the work. I don't want to be in a situation where a customer comes to collect a vehicle and they weren't sure about how we were doing the returns or how the edges would be finished. So it's important just for you to understand their vehicle and for them to understand the product you're going to supply, not once before they've paid for it, but when you're agreeing the work and what you're exactly going to undertake.
Yeah, so try and work around any of those hurdles before you do get to them. And then finally, obviously, we've given you an introduction to the cleaning. The cleaning main principle seems to be very thorough. Use the right material, right cleaning materials. Do it the day before. All the other things that James talked about, but we just gave you a teaser during that bit, because obviously you're going to need to do this specifically for the job that you're on. As we go through the webinar and we start attacking different parts of the cars, we might show you some extra little tips and tricks.
Yeah,
and
we'll
some
go
of
into the
other tools
materials
and
we've
things.
used in more detail, the specific tools we've used in more detail. But do remember, vinyl has an adhesive, but it's only as good as the surface it's stuck to. So I just wanted to make you realise we're not going to spend lots of time on cleaning on every other webinar because it'll get a bit tedious doing cleaning each time. So hopefully we've given you a general overview. Again, on the next webinar we'll be doing questions. So if you have any questions regards cleaning, talking to clients, feel free to get your questions ready and we'll answer them at the end of the next webinar.
Brilliant. All right. So we'll see you guys soon. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye for now.